mayhem.
Hold on to your hats, folks. Today, I'm bestowing upon you the godlike ability to separate the Carrera Digital control unit from the starting straight. Is it necessary, you ask? Well, not really. But hey, sometimes life is about doing cool things just because you can. Separating this control unit means you'll have the freedom to place it anywhere in the room, giving you the perfect view of the starting grid and unparalleled race control. Imagine the possibilities. You can create an all-in-one super control panel with stop buttons, charging bays for your controllers, light switches, a digital to analog switch, and maybe even a button that makes you coffee. Now, wouldn't that be something? So, before we get to building the ultimate racing HQ, first things first, we need to separating that control unit. So let's see how we can do this. Because to be honest, I have no idea. I guess we will be learning together. But before we do any irreversible damage, check this out. Do you like what you see? Do you want more? Want to support the channel, be part of our crew, and enjoy some seriously awesome perks whilst doing it? Well, buckle up, because here's the lowdown. For just $1.49 Australian per month, you become a mate. That's right, you get a loyalty badge that makes you stand out of the crowd. You get early access to all our future videos, your name immortalized in the description section, and priority replies to all your comments. But hold up! It gets better! For $6.99, you level up to Bro. Your name will be written in blood at the end of every video. Plus, you get to shape the show by participating in members-only polls and hang out in the exclusive Bros-Only live chat. Feeling extra fancy? Become a Mega Bro for $19.99. Connect with us on social media for live updates and behind-the-scenes photos, enjoy discounts on merch, and see your name in shining gold on special slot CraftMaster gear because you deserve it. Still not enough? For $59.99, you can become a Super Mega Bro. Get free templates of our builds, troubleshooting help, join our exclusive Super Bro live streams, and even design your own custom merch. And if you're really serious about being the ultimate fan, for $149.99, you'll be my man.
My man.
Enjoy free merch every month and get featured in one of our videos. Yes, you heard that right, so what are you waiting for? Hit that join button under this video, pick your membership level, and join our crew today. So here we have it, the Carrera Digital control unit with the starting straight in one piece, as created by Mother Carrera. But before we continue, I must confess that this modification did not go as I imagined it would. Let's say that if this modification were a song, it would go something like this.
I've had an absolute kind of a day. Everything that could go did go wrong. So if I'm allowed to use the word cunt in a song, I've had an absolute kind of a day.
Failure, some say, is the painful birthplace of knowledge. And if this is true, the headache I now have is not due to an aneurysm from frustration, but rather a swollen brain from all the knowledge I obtained while trying to make my basic idea work. Anyways, let's get this thing started. During the process, I'll point out all my mistakes so you can avoid them. The general idea is that I'll open the back, find the two power wires, cut and extend them, and then detach the straight from the control unit. Simple, right? Well, let's say that this was my first mistake. It's never simple.
The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it.
And talking about things going wrong, this is the point of no return. Break this sticker and you void the warranty. Everything beyond this point is on you. But that won't hold you back, right? Real men wipe their tushies with warranties. And at the end of the day, you'll have this video to learn what not to do. What can possibly go wrong? Short answer? This. Well, it turns out there are more wires here than I expected. There are black and red power cables feeding the 2 lanes, along with blue and yellow cables linking the lap-counting light sensors. I didn't see that coming. But, hey, it's not a disaster. I'll just snip and extend everything like I planned. To keep things straight, I'm going to label each wire. I decided to go with P1 and 2 for the power cables, and S1 to 4 for the sensors. I labeled each wire in 2 places, so when I cut them, all ends have a label. Next, I take out the 2 screws that hold the control unit and the straight part together. Just like that, I've parted the pieces like Moses parting the sea. Now, how is that for a miracle? Bear in mind that the circuit board is held in position by the bottom cover, so we need to cut that too to fit the 2 pieces. Now that we've split the 2 pieces apart, it's time to figure out how to reconnect them in a way that will allow us to use the control unit without being stuck by the track. To deal with the issue of extra cables, I picked up some 6-pin aviation connectors. These will also make it easy to plug and unplug the unit whenever we need to in the future. The easy place to install the connector would have been on one of the sides, but I decided to make my life difficult and went for the area behind the circuit board. It's a very tight space, but I made the very manly mistake of thinking, well, how hard can it be? Poor me. I really overestimated my abilities this time. Not only did I have to battle my old nemesis, soldering, but I also had to fit everything into a tiny space. Talk about a recipe for chaos. And chaos it was. I decided to tackle the toughest part first, soldering. I pulled out my flexible battery soldering iron and got to work. Naturally, that didn't work since the iron didn't have enough power. So I turned to some classic Jeremy Clarkson-style problem solving.
Speed now and power. Speed 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 and power. The speed and power. Speed and power. Speed and power.
But that didn't work great either. So I decided it was a soldering iron issue rather than my own soldering skills. I ordered a new one from Amazon, and while waiting for it to arrive, I worked on how to mount the connector to the control unit. I thought drilling a hole would solve my problem, but that plan fell apart quickly. The space was way too tight, much smaller than I expected. Plus, the plastic was so soft that it crumbled while I was drilling, failing to hold the connector. After sitting there, staring at the mess, I finally had a light bulb moment. I used my powerful soldering iron to melt the rim of the hole, making it more sturdy. I also planned to make a spacer to glue at the front, making the whole assembly strong enough for the connector and creating more space at the same time. It's not pretty, but we will fix that. After some quick measurements, I cut a small spare piece of 6mm MDF. I drilled a hole in the size of the connector and gave it a bit of an angle on the top side to match the unit's curve. On top of it, I cut a piece of tin to the same shape. This tin piece will hold the connector in place and will be screwed on, making it easy to change if needed. A couple of coats of black paint on it to match the unit and it's ready for assembly. I used black hot glue to secure it in place, and as I admired my progress, I couldn't help but to think, hey, things are finally looking up. Then I switched to soldering. The process is pretty simple. I'll use my new and more powerful than the first, but less stiff than the second soldering iron. First, I'll tin the connector pins. Then, I'll do the same with the wires. Once that's done, I'll join them and heat them up until they stick together. Simple as that. The only tricky part is connecting the correct wire to the correct pin so the power doesn't turn on and off every time a car completes a lap. I made a simple plan. The pins are numbered 1 to 6. I'll use pins 1 and 6 for power, pins 2 and 3 for one sensor, and pins 4 and 5 for the other. For the power, I'll use 18 gauge wire, and for the sensors, I'll go with 20 gauge wire. I only have red and black wires, so I'll make that work. Some heat shrinking insulating tubes, and away we go. Now, I already mentioned that I am very bad at soldering, and this took a very long time to get it somehow acceptable. So, unless you find joy in watching other people embarrass themselves, we will be fast-forwarding this. With the hardest part behind us, it's time to put things together. And this is when things started really going sideways. I fastened the connector to the tin cover of the spacer. Then, with a mixture of determination and maybe a hint of desperation, I began my mission to cram this contraption into the still tiny space between the circuit board and the LED panel. The gap was so small, it felt like one of those puzzle games where you must fit a square peg into a round hole. I twisted and turned the components, hoping they would magically come together. Sweat formed on my brow as I pushed against the stubborn wires. I double-checked my work, convinced that if I willed it hard enough, everything would align perfectly. Just a bit more force, or perhaps a well-placed curse word might help. The whole scene felt like a circus act, juggling parts that had no intention of cooperating. Would this be the moment it finally clicked? Or would I end up starting from scratch again in a fit of frustration? Surprisingly, it seemed to work. Emphasis on seemed because this bloody thing had a few more curveballs in store for me. I taped the speaker back in place and got ready to connect the wires. Everything was labeled, so I just had to get them together. I could have soldered the wires directly to the board, but my skills with a soldering iron are questionable. I decided to play it safe and avoid the board for now. First, I trimmed the wires from the board, which turned out to be a bad idea. Stick around and you'll see why. After that, I twisted the wires together and added a little solder to improve the connection. I covered everything with shrink tubing for insulation, and that part was finally done. I tacked all the wires, put the cover back on, and here it is, ready to roll. Now we move on to the starting straight. Here we'll extend out the wires for about 10 to 15 centimeters, which gives us some wiggle room if needed, and attach a plastic connector. This helps hide the wires under the table, allowing for easy connections to the control board. After that, we'll create a separate cable to link the straight section to the control unit. This way, if you want a shorter or longer cable, you can whip one up without messing with the track itself. I go through the same steps again, wrapping, soldering, and insulating the wires. Once that's finished, I tape everything down and put the lid back on since there's nothing else to do inside. Now it's time to attach the connector. I'm using a 2.8mm 6-pin automotive electrical wire connector. The nice thing about this connector is that the wires just need crimping, no soldering required. Hell yeah! And this is what we end up with. After doing the rest of the wires, it's just a matter of pushing them into the connector where they hook in place. To wrap things up, we will now make the cable connecting the control unit to the track. This is pretty straightforward. 6 wires at about 3.5 meters long with the counterpart of the plastic automotive connector on one side and the metal aviation connector on the other. Nothing that can go wrong with this one. Just need to make sure that the wires correspond. With the aviation connector, we are back to soldering. But first, we need to take it apart. Just unscrew the single screw holding it, twist and pull, and that will expose the pins. Again, the pins are numbered, so I'll use the notes I made before to make sure I don't mess up the wires and start a fire instead. After another masterclass in soldering that lasted a lot longer than what you get to see, like a lot longer, I decided that the new digital soldering iron was rubbish and went back to
Speed and power.
And with speed and power, the connector was ready. But as it is a mess, with 6 wires just hanging waiting to get tangled, I had another brilliant idea, to place them inside a 6.5mm split wire loom tubing. My wife would be so proud of me. And with that, we are done. In the end, it wasn't as bad as I thought. It seems like I am a lot better at soldering than I like to admit. The only thing left is a simple test to demonstrate how good of a job I did. And this is a wrap. First things first, power up. That was a kind of weird beeping sound. But it turned on, and that's a win in my books. It sounds like everything is functioning as it should. Sometimes electronics just need a little time to recalibrate after a bit of surgery. The important thing is that it's working and going through the sequences as expected. Next up, coating a car. That's even more disturbing as it's not responding at all. Maybe the other lane. Oh, I just realized that I hadn't connected the wireless controller adapter. I'm both relieved and embarrassed. That's better. It works like a charm, even though the coding sound was weird again. But as long as it works, right? Well, wrong. Because the next and final test went nothing like expected. I ran the car over the lap counting sensors, but there was no beeping, indicating that something is definitely wrong. So to fix the problem, I changed the way I run the car over the sensor, which, for totally unreasonable reasons, did not work. So here I am, staring at the board again, ready to dive back into the maze of troubleshooting. For the sake of keeping this video as short as possible, I will give you a list of only a few things that I did, and which of those worked. This is the moment when all my thoughts turn to mush, like a lumpy bowl of mashed potatoes. I can't help but feel a strong urge to crawl under my bed covers, curled up in the fetal position, eyes shut tight, tears welling up, wishing with every fiber of my being that this pesky problem would just vanish into thin air. It's a bizarre mix of frustration and desperation, like trying to find a missing sock in the laundry. I wonder if it would help if I tried a magic spell or a good old-fashioned tantrum. This is the part where I would gladly trade a week's worth of beer for a simple solution. So, I had to face a tough choice. Scrap the entire project or change the video title to How to Ruin Your Carrera Track in a Complicated Way. I decided instead to start from square one again, taking extra care to do everything right this time. I went back to solder all the connections, and to my surprise, I got much better at it. Guess I picked up a few skills. I became so confident that I soldered wires straight to the board using
Speed and power.
Then I made the spacer twice as thick. This way everything would fit without bending or twisting, and it worked perfectly. A spacer that's at least 15 millimeters thick keeps everything neat and organized. I also changed things up by using connectors instead of permanently soldering the wires together. This makes it easy to attach and detach them if we need to make changes. Again. With everything in place, I felt 100% sure I had done it all right. So, I decided it was time for another test. Nothing. This calls for a drink. Whoever said that alcohol is not the answer is probably as dry as a resin, because this glass of bourbon and Mountain Dew solved all my problems. Feeling the full effect of my poor life choices, I tripped over the cable I made earlier and heard a beep from the control unit. I checked it a few more times, and it beeped again. This noise had nothing to do with a car or a sensor. Then it dawned on me. Everything I'd done, even if it wasn't perfect, was actually correct and should have worked fine. The problem I missed wasn't about my work at all. It was interference. By cramming all the wires into a tight tube to keep things neat, I created a mess. I shouldn't listen to my wife. You see, the electromagnetic field from the power wires messed with the sensor wires. I'm no expert, but with no other ideas, I had to give my theory a shot. Unfortunately, I was too frustrated and tipsy to document it, but to sum it up, I pulled out the wires, separated them with an automotive connector, and ran the test. Okay. All right. Uh-huh. Aha. Yes.
My man!
With the test proving my theory right, it's time to wrap everything up. Literally. Only now, I put the 4 sensor wires in the tube and run the power wires on the outside, wrapped in a self-closing braided wrap. That will keep them away from interfering with each other and look nice at the same time. I guess there is a way to have everything functioning correctly and make my wife happy. And here we are, finally free from Mother Carrera's clutches. We've got the starting straight complete with double automotive connectors, a control unit featuring a secure aviation connector, and our interference-free connecting cable. Put it all together, and we've got a remote-controlled Carrera Digital layout, ready to unleash endless possibilities. Now that this video is wrapped up, you can create your own layout and dodge the mistakes I made. As we plan our next build, remember to listen to your partner, within reason, of course, and don't shy away from trying something new. Crafty out.